What if I told you that the mob, organized crime, has taken on a brand new look that most people wouldn't recognize, and they're hiding in places you'd never believe? In 1932, Eliot Ness declared the mob dead when Al Capone was convicted. But we all know organized crime didn't die, it evolved. We're talking about some of the greatest secret keepers of all time. So what did the mob evolve into? Something more sophisticated, more deadly, and more merciless than you can imagine. How do you find them today, and what are they targeting? It is time to decode the mob. I'm Brad Meltzer. I've spent my life collecting stories, signs, symbols, and codes hidden in plain sight. Some have become the basis for my novels, but I've only scratched the surface. And now history has given me the resources to investigate the rest. This is Decoded.
Say a command.
Find an address. 2433 North Lincoln Avenue, Chicago, Illinois.
How long has it been since you guys have been in Chicago?
Too long.
I visited once many years ago.
Hi, Brad.
Hey guys, I'm guessing you're close to Chicago, the city where many believe the American mob was born. Of course, that was about 100 years ago, back when mobsters wore fedoras and slung Tommy guns, which is very different than what the mob looks like these days.
I thought they got all the bad guys.
According to sources like the FBI and the DEA, the mob is up to a very different game these days. And from what they're telling me, one that puts us all at risk. So if it's changed, we need to get a lock on what exactly the mob looks like here in the 21st century to find out what they're up to, how it's changed from the past, and what they target today.
Hey, Brad, should we be worried that we could get whacked?
I wouldn't be laughing so hard if I were you. Don't forget, you're the ones going after the mob.
I have to tell you, the mob is on my list of people not to bother.
Chicago was the sort of the raison d'etre, if you will, of organized crime during Prohibition. That's why all those movies made in the early 1930s are not so much set in New York someplace, they're set in Chicago. We had a virtual citywide gang war here at one time, which you didn't have in most other cities. You had very, very spectacular violence.
We've all seen news stories of mob violence, but for some of the most spectacular violence, it took place right here at Chicago's Biograph Theater, where gangster John Dillinger was gunned down. Dillinger robbed 24 banks, escaped jail twice, and he raided 4 police stations. Most crooks flee the cops, but when Dillinger's men needed supplies, he brought them straight to the police arsenals to steal ammunition, machine guns, and bulletproof vests. On July 22, 1934, J. Edgar Hoover's team of federal investigators tracked Dillinger to the Biograph. And you know what he watched? What else? A gangster movie. Agents were waiting while he exited, and although they reportedly called for his surrender, Dillinger wanted to shoot it out. He was shot 3 times, and at 10:50 p.m., John Dillinger was pronounced dead.
John, law enforcement calls the mob organized crime. How does the organization work, and what's the hierarchy look like?
The basic setup is there's a boss, there's an underboss who reports directly to the boss, carries out the boss's orders. Then there are street crews, if you will, each run by, the term in the East Coast would be a capo. And then there's guys inside the crews, East Coast terminology, a soldier. The group that's dominated organized crime in Chicago and the surrounding area for years, the Chicago outfit, its roots go all the way back to basically 1900, before Prohibition. Al Capone gets and becomes the Capone gang during Prohibition.
In 1920, the 18th Amendment made the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors illegal. This brought on a dramatic decrease in alcohol consumption and a dramatic increase in organized crime. And there was no bigger name in organized crime than Alphonse Gabriel Capone. Al Capone was born in Brooklyn and moved to Chicago in his 20s, where he quickly rose to the top spot of the city's most notorious gang, the Outfit, and the top spot on the FBI's most wanted list.
I was under the impression that organized crime in Chicago died with Al Capone.
Nothing could be further from the truth, although people like Eliot Ness, etc., declared it dead in 1932, but they were just a little bit off base on that. They're still around today, but they're harder to see, they're harder to pin down.
What do they have left to mess with if there's no prohibition?
Gambling, some labor racketeering, some prostitution, and business racketeering, juice lending, things like that. Organized crime is here and will always be here. As long as there's a public demand for something that's illegal, someone will supply it.
Al Capone is to organized crime what Thomas Jefferson is to American politics, a founding father. So if we want to understand exactly what the mob is today, we first need to understand where it came from.
Was Al Capone a mobster? Yes, he was a mobster. Was he a monster? No, he was not a monster.
What's the significance of the Green Mill with your uncle?
The Green Mill was purchased by my uncle, so really takes me back in time when I come in here. This was the booth that Al reportedly sat in every time he came in here. But it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, he can see the door and he can see most
right
of
there.
the people in here.
Yep, absolutely.
Deirdre, you actually met Al Capone and you
Sure.
remember him.
He taught me to swim in his pool in Florida, helped me learn to ride a bike, taught me the mandolin. Yeah, we were a very, very close family.
Was Al Capone an emotional guy? I
Very.
mean, he wasn't just a heartless killer that
No.
we think of him?
No, he was very emotional. If he saw a child hurt or hungry, he would cry. If he saw an animal suffering, he would cry.
Deirdre knew Al Capone, the loving family man, but Al Capone, the mobster, was cutthroat, deadly, and ruthless. When a mayor he had put into office announced he was going to put Capone away for good, Capone threw him down the steps of Town Hall. And Capone was said to have been responsible for one of the bloodiest days in Chicago, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Capone reportedly had his men dress up like the Chicago police and then gun down 7 of his rivals. But he would never be prosecuted for this or for bootlegging. So what finally sent Al Capone to Alcatraz? You know this one, tax evasion.
How did the legacy of the outfit come to be?
You know, the United States government decided to outlaw alcohol. People wanted alcohol. That's what the Capone outfit did. If you take the Rockefeller family, the Kennedy family, and the Capone family, the origins and the beginnings are all exactly the same. Al Capone said, if I am guilty of breaking the law, then my customers are as guilty as I am. Al said, when I serve alcohol, it's called bootlegging, but when the people on North Shore serve it, it's called hospitality.
Right.
In your mind, is the organized crime of today scarier and more dangerous than it was under
Yes.
Al Capone?
To me, yes, I think it is, because there's no accountability, there's no honesty left anymore. They can affect a lot more people in a lot broader area. The organized crime that, you know, my family was involved in was very regional, very small, very community. That old adage, honor among thieves, really fit with what the Capone outfit was doing.
Deirdre is clearly remembering a time when not everybody saw good fellas as bad guys. So imagine it's Prohibition and you want a few bottles of wine for your wedding. Or it's the Great Depression and no bank will give you a loan for your small business. Your local wise guy could get these things for you. Sure, if you didn't pay them back, it was baseball bats versus kneecaps. But many of them kept their word, and if you didn't mess with them, they didn't mess with you.
I was raised that your word is your bond and family is everything, and that's exactly how that organization ran. They were a family. You knew what was expected of you. If you broke the rules, there had to be some punishment for it, and that's the way that it was.
What else was involved in their code? I mean, I've heard, and I don't know if it's true, that women and children are off limits, for example.
Absolutely.
For hits.
Family is off limits. You know, I can guarantee that no innocent person was ever hurt when the Capone boys ran things in Chicago.
Deirdre isn't just waxing nostalgic about Uncle Al. This was the sacred code by which the mob lived and died. In 1981, LA mob boss Jimmy Fradiano entered witness protection and earned his nickname, the Weasel. He squealed on the inner workings of the mafioso, including the secret Mafia initiation ritual. It dates back 2 centuries to Sicily and is referred to as a second baptism. Your trigger finger is pricked and your blood is spilled onto the picture of a saint. The picture is then lit on fire while you recite, "As burns this saint, so will burn my soul if you betray the Mafia. And you're asked if you would kill your brother to protect its secrets. In fact, when people use the word sub rosa to mean clandestine, this is a reference to the Mafia's fanatical secrecy. It means under the rose and comes from the practice of hanging a rose over a door when secret meetings were underway. But when the Weasel snitched, he revealed the Mafia's 3 secret vows. 1, never mess with women or children. 2, never mess with drugs. And 3, never snitch.
If the outfit were still operating, wouldn't they be operating in narcotics? Because that's today's prohibition.
My grandfather saw the things changing in the 50s, and he told me that people were losing honor. The honor was disappearing. And he also saw the influence of drugs and wanted nothing to do with that. But I do know that my family would have nothing to do with narcotics at all. Al Capone would be appalled at what some people are calling gangs today.
Deirdre, if we're looking further into organized crime today, where would you suggest that we look?
I'm not an expert on Whitey Bulger, but he was involved in organized crime, and he was on what they say on the lam for years.
Whitey Bulger was the former head of Boston's Irish mob. And if it was illegal and you can make a buck doing it, Whitey Bulger did it. If anyone was a next generation Al Capone, it was Whitey, who was recently arrested. So this is who Buddy, Mac, and Scott need to look into if we want to find out what does the mob really look like today. We're investigating the evolution of the modern-day mob, and it's led us to Whitey Bulger, the last great Irish mob boss. When authorities finally caught up with Whitey at the age of 81, he compiled quite a distinguished resume, including extortion, narcotics distribution, and 19 counts of murder. Buddy, Mac, and Scott are talking with a man who used to be Whitey's primary enforcer and one of the most feared men in Boston.
I grew up in South Boston, Mass, and the local Irish mob boss was James Whitey Bulger. And I started out as an enforcer by collecting drug money and stuff like that. He knew I was a vicious street fighter. He knew I was good in the ring and out of the ring. Yeah. He saw me sidekick some guy over a parked car one time and beat the guy half to death and never say a word about it. And he liked the silence, like I didn't brag. I wasn't on an ego trip or nothing. I didn't want everybody to think I was a tough guy. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Whitey Bulger.
Eddie McKenzie was a former Ultimate Fighting champ before Whitey hand-picked him to be his right-hand man and primary enforcer. Eddie speaks openly about his time as mob muscle and the time he did in a federal penitentiary for assault and attempted murder after he was caught. I won't go into specifics, but suffice it to say, when Eddie McKenzie showed up at your door, it meant the time to apologize and negotiate was over. It was time to pray.
Well, how did Whitey Bulger go so long without getting caught?
Whitey's brother, William Bulger, was the president of the Massachusetts Senate, and a childhood friend, John Conley, was running the FBI Organized Crime Task Force in Boston.
There's a saying that Irish kids in South Boston find their destinies in one of the 3 Ps: politics, police, or prison. While the ruthless Whitey spent some quality time in prison, his younger brother Billy grew up to become a state senator. Another Southie boy, John Connolly, grew up in the same housing project with the Bulger brothers, and he grew up to be one of the top agents in the FBI, as well as one of the most crooked. When they were kids, Whitey used to buy John Connolly ice cream back in Boston, and when they rose to the top of the drug and drug enforcement worlds, John continued to accept favors from Whitey in the form of huge cash payments. Their story inspired the movie The Departed with Jack Nicholson. In the end, Whitey spent 12 years on the FBI's most wanted list, and the reward for his capture was $2 million, second only to Osama bin Laden's.
So how did Whitey Bulger meet his downfall?
Whitey informed on us. Whitey ratted on us in 1990. Set all 51 of us up to get himself out of an upcoming indictment. And that's when it started to come out, that he was a top FBI informer.
And now he's got to get out of there.
So he tried to give them 51 people from South Boston to, do what he did so well, is to buy his way out.
Including you.
It didn't work. Yeah, I was one of the 51. And many times people ask me, how did you feel about that? And I goes, well, how do you think Caesar felt when he got shanked by Brutus? Here's a guy that I would have killed anybody for, followed to the grave, thinking he was this huge, honorable guy in the code of silence and don't rat and all that. Turned out to be the biggest rat of them all. Whitey Bulger, in my opinion, was the Hannibal Lecter of South Boston.
Whitey was as mean as they come, and there is nothing this guy wouldn't do to make some cash. He even won the lottery once. That's right, lucky day. Whitey Bulger split a pot of $14 million with his buddies. They just happened to come into the possession of a winning ticket that had been bought at a corner store that who else owned? Whitey Bulger. So picture for a moment the conversation that took place between Whitey and the guy who bought that ticket. Odds of winning the Massachusetts lottery? 1 in 14 million. Odds of you giving Whitey Bulger your winning ticket? Guaranteed.
So who is the next Whitey Bulger? Like, who's the guy beneath him?
The Irish and the Italians have basically all been set up and caught and busted by the FBI. You know, you have John Gotti on one side, the Italian side. You have Whitey Bulger on the Irish side. To me, they're like the last of the Mohicans. Once Whitey Bulger got caught, all the cowboys came in trying to take over, and there was no organizational chart to them or anything like that. And the statistics on heroin and angel dust increase, and all these kids were committing suicide through Oxycontins and all that. If Whitey was there, and I'm not sticking up for him, you'd never see that. I've always been a firm believer that if there's going to be crime in your neighborhood, it should be organized crime.
Like Capone, Bulger operated by a code, and there were lines he just wouldn't cross. He didn't allow the sale of heroin or PCP on his streets, and dealers who sold to kids were violently removed from his neighborhoods. I in no way want to suggest that either was a man of principle, but if you knew their code, you can stay out of their way. With today's mob, everyone is a potential victim.
What groups would you single out as being the dangerous ones?
The dangerous ones, they're not Americans. They're the Russians, they're the Colombians, they're the Mexican mobs coming up now from Mexico. All these people are without hesitation. They're running around like cocaine cowboys, we call them, with shotguns, killing everybody in sight and taking neighborhoods like the scourge, you know? They're very scary.
Of those, who do you think is the scariest now?
The Mexicans, oh my God. With the Italians, they don't kill your family, they'll kill you. The Mexicans will kill your family and stuff $100 bills down their throats and give you a Colombian necktie, which they slit your throat and they pull your tongue out. They're as vicious as they come. There was no fooling around with them.
You guys wake up this morning with that force head in your bed that I sent?
Not yet.
Tell me about Eddie McKinsey. What do you have to say?
This guy, Brad, he was the real article, man.
The most interesting thing Eddie said was that the Mexican Mafia were the really nasty guys these days, that they would kill anybody. He said they'll kill your whole family.
Then the Mexican Mafia is the lead we need to follow, and I have a good contact for you.
Now you know why we're looking into the mob. We just learned that the biggest mob threat in modern America may not come from America. Buddy and Mac are talking to someone who's spent time on the front lines and has seen the terrifying new face of the mob firsthand.
Basically, organized crime in Mexico has grown exponentially beyond anything we ever saw with La Cosa Nostra or with the Russian mob in the United States. They have a presence in over 270 U.S. cities, and they supply 90%, possibly more, of the drugs that Americans consume every day.
Sylvia, what does the face of Mexican crime look like today?
It looks very similar to American organized crime, especially back in the 30s and what we're seeing now. Right. Their origins were the same. You know, the way that they started in the business, the way that some of the gangsters behave, so many parallels to the Italian mafia, to the Russian mobsters. But, you know, even Al Capone knew he had his limits. The Mexican mobsters in Mexico, no limits whatsoever to what they can do. And the amount of money they have is through the roof compared to what the Italian mobsters had. I mean, the Italian mob, the Russian mob, never did the things that the Mexican mobsters are doing now. They have evolved well beyond organized crime.
It seems like American law enforcement has been pretty successful in fighting the Sicilian mafia here. Why are we not successful in fighting this new Mexican mafia?
Well, it's because we're not going after the money like we did with Al Capone. Most people think Al Capone was busted for bootlegging when it turns out that he was busted by the IRS for tax evasion. So anti-money laundering laws in Mexico are very, very weak. And they have a disincentive to strengthen them because so much money coming from the illicit drug trade is getting injected into the Mexican economy. Some people say that it's up to 10 or 11% of the GDP. You know, one of the things that absolutely terrifies me is the amount of marijuana that's being grown in our national parks and our national forests. Talk about doing things under our noses.
In recent years, drug lords have become even better at concealing their illegal dealings by hiding them in your backyard. Mexican cartels have started growing millions of dollars of marijuana inside our U.S. national forests, just miles away from campers and hikers. It's a brilliant idea for a number of reasons: free land, instant privacy, and no way to legally trace ownership. The problems arise when a camper or park ranger stumbles onto the wrong trail. In an instant, their nature hike leads them to a militia protecting an entire narcotics factory, and the results are deadly.
Will legalization of marijuana, sort of eradicate that element of organized crime?
Yes, it would make a dent because of the drug income that the organized crime groups in Mexico have. Marijuana makes up the largest share, but they still have other sources of income to rely on. It's definitely not going to make them go away, similar to when Prohibition was lifted in 1933. Organized crime in Chicago and New York didn't go away. It wasn't as violent, it wasn't as pervasive, but they stuck around for quite a bit.
And how else are they making money besides drug dealing?
Their number 2 money-making venture is kidnapping and ransom. It used to be that the cartels only kidnapped rivals to punish them, to send a message, to demand their drug money back, but now they've seen it as a very lucrative source for ransom money. So not only are they kidnapping rivals, now they're kidnapping innocents.
And if their relatives don't pay the ransom?
Most likely, they will never see their relative again.
I have to say, I had no idea that there was a widespread kidnapping ring in the United States of America run by Mexican mafia.
Several of them. Particularly Los Zetas cartel, which is operating along the Gulf Coast of Mexico and beyond that.
Not only does the mob have a new face, but it has an entirely different set of rules. Old lines and borders have become meaningless, and everyone is now a potential victim. So if that sounds terrifying to you, just wait. You haven't even heard the scariest part yet. Our investigation into the mob has led us to look into Mexican cartels and the Los Zetas. What was formerly a minor threat south of the border has become a major threat right here on American soil. The Los Zetas might be the most frightening cartel out there. Earlier this year, a man and woman who posted critical comments about the cartel on a blog were found strung up and mutilated on a highway overpass. According to news reports, the Zetas started out as the military wing of the Gulf Cartel, and the two factions were major players in drug trafficking. But in 2010, the Zetas began to operate independently of the Gulf Cartel, and that started a turf war. Beyond the countless terrorist attacks and mass killings these guys are responsible for in Mexico, they are now supposedly expanding into the U.S. So remember the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929? Well, the Zetas took a page right out of Capone's playbook. Allegedly, 6 cartel members dressed as policemen riddled a 30-year-old American's home in Phoenix with over 100 bullets, killing him within seconds.
Because it sounds like a war. What you're describing sounds like a war if they're killing 72 people at a time and they're finding mass graves.
Yeah. We see beheadings all the time in Mexico, but the first beheading related to the drug war happened in Chandler, Arizona.
That's a nice
about
town.
a year ago. It is.
It was.
We had a kidnapping a couple of years ago of a 6-year-old child in Las Vegas because his grandfather owed over $1 million to a Mexican drug cartel.
Okay, so there's the drug traffic, the kidnapping. Is there another area? I mean, they'll continue to evolve and get better and better, I assume.
They will. Well, extortion is a really, really big problem going on in Mexico right now, and they are making tons of money by just threatening business owners, asking for that weekly payment. And recently we had a big attack, one of the deadliest attacks in Mexico that happened in Monterrey, where a casino was burned to the ground in a matter of 3 minutes or less, and 52 people were killed in the process. It was allegedly by Los Zetas. They were claiming that they had been extorting the owner of the casino for a certain amount of money every week, and he didn't pay up, so that was their way of sending a message.
Where are they headed next?
One of their newer money makers involves recruiting forcibly, sometimes voluntarily, hackers to come in and help them with information theft, with fraud, with all sorts of cyber crimes.
Okay, this is bad. Gangsters with bandwidth.
And the amount of information they can obtain on targets, on rivals and citizens is scary, because now they can hack into public security systems. So pretty much the same systems that police officers use. So if they want to find a rival or find somebody who they want to target, they can do it now.
You're saying that they're way more sophisticated than they ever were before.
They're way more sophisticated, they're better trained, they're better funded, and they are more willing to take risks. And they operate with impunity.
This is more than I thought. I mean, I didn't know it was this far-reaching.
It's a very, very scary situation.
We just learned that the mob has taken the leap into cyberspace. This is not Al Capone's mob. We didn't get messed with unless you mess with them. To become a victim of cybercrime, all you got to do is turn on your computer.
I entered cybercrime in 2000 when nobody knew what it was. But how much it has advanced in the last, say, 10 years is amazing.
If I ask you, is organized crime, dead, or is it bigger than it ever was? What would be your answer?
I wouldn't say it's bigger. I would say it's more diverse and more widespread, meaning there are smaller numbers of individuals. So the mobs of the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, each group controlled their city. You got, Lucky Luciano, and you got Al Capone, you got guys, they each control their areas, right? Now, one guy controls pieces of the world. The mob is more sophisticated, and I'm not saying that these guys know how to hack into systems and so on. They don't. They know where the money's being made, and they will support and process and provide the network for them to continue to do this. This is the mob's world. They are con men from day one, and the victims nowadays are everybody, and you don't even know you're falling for it.
Can you tell me how it works?
Okay. You have an individual or a group of individuals that are the producers, for lack of a better word. They hack, they steal, they grab the information, all right? This could be credit card databases. This could be your social media account, your Facebook, your Twitter, those types of things. Then that information is transferred to the fraudster, the carder, all right? And these are individuals who are going to turn this into profit. So I get your credit card information, and there's multiple ways I can utilize it. I can try to buy certain things in different places. I can use it for pure identity theft. I steal your identity. I can open loans in your name. I can buy cars in your name. And I'm taking little bits of money here and there all the way through. But it's small amounts. $5 here, $10 here. It's Christmas time. Who looks at their card and goes, $10? Oh, I could have done that.
Right.
All right, that's all right. And they just let it go on by. Well, $10 on 60,000 cards, we just made $600,000.
Right.
You know?
What you just described resembles the network that we used to think of when we thought of the mob.
All right. Organized crime is the exact same way, and the methodology with which hackers and carders are extracting money follows that exact same format. And then the money just flows its way up to the top.
You think your computer's pretty secure? Barack Obama and Sarah Palin have both been victims of cybercrime. And organizations from NASA to the CIA have been hacked numerous times. That's why McKinley and Scott are right now talking to perhaps the most notorious computer hacker in all of American history. If the mob is committing crime online, they're probably using methods that he invented.
Years ago, I was kind of doing things that were against the law. Nowadays, companies actually hire me to break into their systems to find their security problems before the real bad guys do.
So, Kevin, how do you figure this stuff out? I mean, does somebody show you, or does your brain just work that way where you figure this out?
It was kind of self-taught. You know, I was fascinated with technology. This was 1978, 1979. So I started hacking before it was actually illegal.
Mitnick didn't hack for the money, he hacked for the challenge, and no challenge was too big. Mitnick led the FBI on a years-long game of cat and mouse while hacking into MCI, Pacific Bell, the FBI, and even the Pentagon. And you know what his alias was when he was hiding from the FBI? Eric Weiss, the real name of Harry Houdini. When the FBI finally caught him, he served 5 years, including 8 months in solitary. Because a judge was convinced that Mitnick was so dangerous with a computer, he could, and this is a direct quote, start a nuclear war by whistling into a payphone.
I feel like I'm relatively safe because I've been careful about how my website is registered. I take off anything that has my address, so am I safe?
Not necessarily. Let's say you have a website, your own personal website, and I'm able to compromise it. What I do is I load this code onto your personal website, so when you visit it, it gives me complete access to your computer. So that's one method.
Right.
With computers, the Mafia has 3 ways to hack you. The first is physical, physically going through your trash, wallet, or notes to find a password. The second is technical. This is Hollywood's version of hacking, and it's done entirely on computers. This uses software and backdoors to trick your computer system into letting them in so they can take over. The third is social engineering. Rather than trick your computer, they trick you. This is everything from phony phishing scams asking for your bank account number, to the Nigerian prince asking you to wire him large amounts of money, to the mail enhancement products that I've never seen in my inbox. But do you know why your email gets flooded with hundreds of spam emails? Because they work thousands of times a day.
What can you find out about me on the internet?
Everything.
Can you show us something?
Yeah, I can show you something. So you're really careful with that, your date of birth, your where you live, your social security number, you're really careful. Let me see what comes up here. Oh, here's one that was in Portland before, and also the same person with the social is in Los Angeles. So here's a person with your first and last name that was in Portland before in LA now. Could this be you?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's her.
So this is all your addresses. Do you recognize these phone numbers here?
That's an old work number.
See? Yeah, so what happens is, organizations sell your information.
Oh my God.
And Kevin, this is somebody who's trying to be careful.
Right.
I mean, she thinks she's being secure
This is
on
where I
the
went to
internet.
college.
If you're a U.S. citizen, everything is available.
So obviously I can see how you could turn this into a very lucrative enterprise. I mean, once you get this information, though, what is the trend today? What are cyber criminals doing out there, and how much money are they making?
Well, there's the underground marketplace, where hackers break into corporations like e-commerce sites through malicious code. They steal all their credit card numbers. They call them dumps. That's the name of it. And they sell it on the underground market because they're making millions and millions of dollars. So I see that's kind of where organized crime is going, simply to the money.
Even the guys that are doing this, they only know one piece, one step in the chain. The heads that are behind this, that are running this, all right, are directing it all the way down.
In the old days, the foot soldiers knew who the boss was. Do today's cyber criminal foot soldiers know who the boss is?
No.
And that's a problem, right?
That's a huge problem, because how do you stop them? The anonymity of the internet helps to that. So when you ask who the head of these organized crime units are, could be anybody. And that's what law enforcement is trying to figure out.
So the Al Capones and the Lucky Lucianos of today are somewhat anonymous.
Absolutely.
Where is it happening mostly?
Cybercrime is happening here in the United States. This is the primary location. Why? Because we know how to do it. We know how to manipulate the systems. We know how everything's done.
These people are realizing they can make a ton of money anonymously?
Yeah, absolutely. And think about it. They're not hurting anybody in their mind. I don't know you. I don't see you. I'm just taking your credit card, 16 little digits, that I'm now going to use online and make purchases.
So it appears to be a victimless crime, but it, by no way is it a victimless crime.
Exactly.
You're chipping away, bleeding me dry like $5 at a time, or bleeding America dry, or the world.
Exactly. Last year, $4.5 billion was stolen through cybercrime. The mob has always been involved in the criminal activities and whatever law, whatever new trend. I mean, this is cons. This is matchstick men. This is the epitome of manipulating individuals to get money out of them. And this is what the mob does. They always have. Sometimes it's through intimidation, and sometimes it's through straight trickery. And in fact, I'm certain the mob bosses of today, if you want to say they're sitting in Vegas or in Jersey or whatever, are involved in this.
So if Al Capone were alive today, where would he fit into the cybercrime scheme?
If Al Capone were alive today, he'd be running a tech company.
The state of the mob today, and we've learned about two terrifying forces: Mexican cartels who are starting to bring their vicious methods into American territory, and the cyber mafia, who just need a Wi-Fi connection to rob you from anywhere in the world.
We've heard about the Mexican cartels, and we've heard about cybercrime. Which one's worse?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because they're not unique, separate, and different anymore. Mexican drug cartels do have a cyber presence. They are using cyberspace to conduct their acts. They're going to shift their method of operation to whatever it is that's making them the money the fastest way possible with the least amount of risk.
Doesn't cybercrime require skilled laborers who are, computer experts?
Correct.
So where do they get them?
Mexico also has a tremendous database of skilled labor. A lot of it is technological. And we're teaching these guys. So someone gets this really cool computer savvy skill, and now their options are open. And unfortunately, cartels have so much money, so they can go get the best intelligence and the best capable minds. And now this entire nightmare that we're talking about is not just drug trafficking or human trafficking, it's now turned into cyber terrorism.
How does it affect the, like us and our children?
Their ability to co-opt and steal your identity, for them to know where you are and geotag you based on where your computer or smartphone is. They can find you and they can follow you. And if they want to get you, they absolutely can without even leaving their desk. They can do it with a point and a click.
So are you saying when my phone says, can I use your current location, I should hit no?
You should hit no.
Yeah, I always hit no.
Me too.
Look at these journalists in Mexico that were just murdered by the cartels.
The international hacking community Anonymous threatened to expose the Zetas after the cartel reportedly kidnapped one of their members. For the first time in history, we have a gang war being fought not on the streets, but in cyberspace. The cartel retaliated by murdering 2 well-respected Mexican bloggers and hanging them from a bridge, leaving a warning signed with a telltale Z. But here's the scariest part. The Zetas hunted down the bloggers using sophisticated computer tracking techniques similar to those used by Anonymous. That's right. The cartels are almost as skilled at cybercrime as the hackers.
When we think of organized crime, we always think of other ethnic groups, Italians, Irish, Russians, something like that. How did the Mexicans get this experience, and why are they making so much money doing this?
In essence, this issue in Mexico is not new. This has been happening for generation after generation. But then when one of the more sophisticated and dominant leaders was captured on a joint operation between the U.S. Coast Guard and DEA, then you lost the kingpin. And that was Pablo Escobar. And now what's happening right now is an absolute Darwinian natural selection between the cartels on who is going to control that southwest border region. And that is the people who make the product and transport the product into an almost insatiable appetite of Americans that want marijuana and cocaine, ecstasy, and crystal methamphetamine. And now the new rule of the day is the human trafficking. And they compete financially with some of the most successful, legitimate corporations globally. When you have this much money and you're in control of this much supply and demand, you have so much liquid cash that you can use to defend your enterprise. Taking a high-ranking FBI agent or a high-ranking Border Patrol agent or even a high-ranking Mexican official, everybody has their price. And that is precisely why it's unresolved today. This is a transnational, global enterprise, so you have factions in other countries. You've got boots on the ground. You've got logistics and supply chain. You've got transborder commerce of drugs, people, and money. And then you look at the weapons they use. MP5s, M4s, fragmentation grenades, Barrett 50s. It is a war.
Where do they buy this military equipment? These guns you're describing are military. Whose military sells it to them?
Well, no military is selling them to them, but the cartels have co-opted the gangs, and the gang members have co-opted the military. A lot of these kids, they are card-carrying, tatted gangbangers, and they will join the U.S. Department of Defense for one reason, and that's to learn how to fight. And then when they finish their training, they're back to the street, and we are up against an adversary that is well-trained.
So you're saying that we are training the very people that are going to go do harm against us later.
And have been for some time.
As someone who's been through basic training, I found the idea of criminals being schooled in military intelligence, marksmanship, and sabotage absolutely terrifying.
So law enforcement, you need a pretty elite SWAT operator to have the same training as some of these guys that these gangs are churning out. And unfortunately, right now, these guys have the training that is not afforded to U.S. law enforcement.
But in the end, the organized crime wins.
Organized crime usually does.
We've been looking into the modern state of the mob, and what we found is frightening. Criminals today have abandoned the traditional code of silence in order to secure as much financial gain as possible. And with more players wanting their piece of the action, competition is fierce. And that means bad things for normal people like you and me. So where is organized crime today, and who is likely to become their next victim?
So do you guys feel unsafe after having looked into all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
My money is unsafe, my mortgage is unsafe, the things that they can get to online certainly are unsafe.
Yeah, I mean, I started this investigation thinking about the mob in a really, I guess, antiquated, nostalgic way. There were gang heads, there were leaders, there were bosses, but you knew who could kill you. And for me, what's troubling about what we've learned is that it's actually, I think it's gotten way worse than it ever was. It is nameless and faceless, and it is networked out there globally, and we don't know who these people are who are running the networks of crime. The gangs of yesteryear, the organized crime, the mob that we thought of, worked in pretty contained ways, right? It was alcohol, prostitution, and racketeering in numbers, right? Okay, so let's look how it's changed. There are many more ways in which you can make money in organized crime than there ever were.
No question, and I think that's because of the internet.
There's pirating DVDs. There's actually taking, beauty products online and half unfilling the bottles and filling them with cheap stuff. I mean, there's everything you can think of.
There's counterfeiting, there's credit card fraud. I mean, it's all over the place. We're probably talking about far more money today than they could have ever dreamed about back in the heyday of organized crime and the mob. And what's really interesting is, I mean, back in the day, the mob was really concentrated in neighborhoods. But with the World Wide Web and the internet now, it literally is worldwide.
The neighborhood they control now is like a continent, right?
Somebody from India can steal from you, where before it might have just been somebody down the street.
Okay, I have to say, I'm a little relieved. I know this sounds strange, but I'm relieved they can do it from their computer rather than shoot me in the head.
No, I agree with you on that completely.
It's sanitized robbery.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that to me doesn't make the organized crime any less devastating. They can strike at any time. They can take, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a minute.
But do you feel like with what we've learned that there's something you can do, that you can change your passwords, that you can use cash? I mean,
I feel like those safeguards are basically a Band-Aid on a compound fracture. And the minute that I change my passwords, what I learned from E.J. Hilbert is, that organized crime, the hackers, the computer cyber criminals are always one step ahead of law enforcement, and they're many, many steps ahead of us. The worst part for me, in everyone we've talked to, is that I feel really exposed now, especially because of this online problem. I'm not going to use email or social networking again without sort of looking over my shoulder now and thinking, who is watching?
Yeah.
And that was I never even thought about that.
Absolutely.
The mob, the mafia, the outfit, organized crime, whatever you want to call it, I think it's bigger, badder, scarier than it ever has been. And I think it's just changed, morphed, evolved into something that is out of control.
I agree with you guys 100%. Organized crime definitely still exists today. I think in some sense with the cartels it may be more violent. With the cybercrime it might be less violent, but it is definitely more powerful. When you can reach out to the entire world and use them as victims of your organization versus your neighborhood, it is more powerful than ever.
And you never have to look them in the eye.
Right.
Right, and what I really came away from this with is if we're online, we're vulnerable, and we're all online all the time.
Will this change your behavior?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to have to get much more vigilant about protecting my identity.
Well, do you think it's time to go change our passwords, you guys?
Yeah.
Yes, all of them.
By the way, we should check under the Lincoln before we start it up.
That's a great idea. Oh, my God, check under the Lincoln. Oh, man.
Our investigation has brought us from the days of Al Capone's Chicago outfit to its late 20th century evolution into Boston's Irish mobs. But why do we look back to the past? To show you just how far the mob has come today. Cartels south of the border are no longer afraid to flex their muscle on American turf. And as you've seen, they're online. And even our own military may not be able to protect us now that the mob is enlisting. But for many, the scariest element of today's mob is not their new technology. It's their willingness to go after anyone. And you know why this matters to me? When I was growing up in Brooklyn, I watched as my father got intimidated by a mobster, a real one. I knew who he was, heard what he did. But the worst part was that he wasn't introduced as a mobster. He was introduced as a friend, coming into our house with a huge smile on his face. I still remember that terror. And that's why you need to know what the mob looks like today, to know your enemy. In the words of one of my heroes, Winston Churchill, you have enemies, good. That means you've stood up for something sometime in your life.